Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky are the creators of the award-winning comic book Sex Criminals. In this episode, we discuss the journey from conception to the finale of this unique and entertaining comic. I'm a big fan of Sex Criminals, so it was a privilege to hear these hilarious creators share stories about their collaboration. Not only have they developed a lifelong friendship through the comic, but they have also acquired the most dedicated fans. It was an honor to speak with Matt and Chip as their 7-year comic book has come to an end and discover what is next in their future. For those that don't already know, Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky are both New York Times best-selling authors and Eisner-winning comic creators. In addition to Sex Criminals, Matt Fraction is best known for his work on Jimmy Olsen, Odyssey, Casanova, Hawkeye, and November. Chip is a Toronto native who started as a journalist for the National Post before his jump into comics. He also creates comic books for Marvel, Image, and Archie. Please help support this podcast by sharing and rating it. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going, I would certainly appreciate it. You can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/sifumimichan. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at sifumimichan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Matt and Chip. Thank you for joining me on Culture Chat.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Oh my goodness. It's such an honor to have both of you here.
I'm excited to finally get to meet Chip. Hey, buddy. Nice to get to see your face, see what you look like. Hi. It's been great working with you.
You're just as I imagined.
Literally.
All that you dreamed of and more.
Yeah.
Well, this is unbelievable timing that I'm able to have both of you on the show because, of course, the epic Sex Criminals just wrapped up. It's been a long time coming. I'm so happy and honored to finally meet Chip. I've been fortunate to have Matt join me quite frequently, and I have kind of like the Portland crew. And I just recently read, are you in Toronto right now, Chip?
I'm in Victoria, British Columbia.
Same time zone.
We're trying winter out here. Yeah, same time zone. So yeah, we decided against a socially distant Toronto winter.
Mm-hmm. Good call. Good call.
The no snow West Coast life. So we're doing that until April.
Okay, that makes
amazing.
Sense. I have a lot of family in Toronto.
Okay.
It's amazing that there's snow in Toronto until April.
Which is why everybody's escaping.
No, I mean, it's not really. I mean, it's just I have to think about it for a second. But like, wow, that's really. I get it, chum. Yeah. I really get it.
Yeah. It's no good.
No good. No bueno. So, well, first of all, again, I'm super psyched to have both of you on, and I'm sure many of our listeners who are huge comic fans know a lot about you both. And for my non-comic book listeners, they love to get to know you guys. And so, like any good comic book story, I would like to hear your origin story on how you met, and then what your first impressions were of one another. So, when did you guys first meet?
Well, Matt?
We knew each other like digitally, like as sort of digital presences.
Yeah.
Like I sort of feel like my first introduction was to Chip's work. And it just made me laugh. Like, it's like I'm a cheap laugh to begin with, I'm a cheap date. I laugh at everything. But but I
earned those laughs.
No, you did. But here's the thing: is that there's a different laugh that comes out when I really find something funny. So much. Well, I just hit something with my leg, and my seat just did that. I swear that wasn't planned. So much so that like Kelly Sue knows, like she can tell when something really gets me. And Chip made me laugh like that. Aside from the fact that like. For all the just completely absurd, obscene and ridiculous kind of sense of humor, like he had a skill that you didn't notice because it's so, because the content was so kind of crazy. it hid like how actually like gifted a cartoonist he was. And I'm like, so I just was a fan. Like I found him a fascinating creator, and he made me laugh in a very weird way. And then I did a show in Toronto, and that was when we first met, right?
Yeah.
And it was right when X-Men 500 had come out, and I think they gave away copies at the door of this Toronto convention. So all I did was sign my name all day long, and I had it's the only time I've ever had I had blood blisters, and I would walk home to the hotel or walk back to Rogers Center, and my hand would sort of palsy, and I would have to go and just run it under as hot water as I could stand for the muscles to relax again. I don't know how many people attended that show, but I signed I signed a book for all of them, it felt like.
Wow.
And then one night, and I was just kind of in this fugue state of I would go back and try to sleep at night, and all I would see was my name. And then one night there was Chip, and there was a group that we were with, but as I remember, you and I were just kind of huddled off at our corner of the table.
Yeah. I remember feeling quite shy, and it was because we'd known each other online for about 10 years, I'd say. And we interacted on message boards, on Twitter, wherever. And Matt was the smartest, coolest, funniest guy wherever I saw him, online. And you have that thing when you spot somebody like that, you want to impress them all the time. And I think I had a little bit of that in the beginning. And if I got a comment back from Matt, or we joke back and forth, it felt so good because we always kind of felt in sync. Except again, Matt was cooler, and it was awesome for me back then watching Matt's career, because I also have a thing where there's people I like, and then I don't want to read their work because it'll change the way I view somebody, especially if it's bad. But Matt, I knew I would like it, and so kind of as his career was taking off, I would read everything he put out and I'd love it. And I'm just like, oh man, he's cool, smart, funny, and he's making great books. That's awesome. And I wasn't really doing a lot of comics at the time. I was working for newspapers and just kind of doing my own thing. So it felt like two different kind of tracks that we were on, even though we had kind of so much in common. So I think, after we actually physically met in Toronto, and it felt like, oh no, we're actually friends. Yeah. We're not just online friends. This is an actual friendship. No, it felt a lot easier.
And no, right. We've known each other since 4th grade. It had that kind of that feeling of and it was just a matter of trying to find a thing to do.
Yeah, and the first thing we actually did together was a music video.
Yeah, we did a music video for Fucked Up. That was kind of put together by Tom Sharpling of The Best Show, and it was just such a effortless. I mean, except for all the work involved, the working together wasn't the hard part.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was just
exactly.
we spoke each other's language and knew what we were doing, and it just sort of felt like, oh yeah, this is funny. I worked with Gabriel and Fabio on commercials for ESPN Brazil before Casanova. So technically, you were the second or third collaborator, depending. I have worked with them in animation before comics, weirdly enough. But so that was it. We knew then at that point we're fans of each other and we like each other and we can work together. So we should absolutely find something to do somewhere.
Yeah, and both of us, our careers were kind of hitting these weird points. I'd been working at newspapers for over 10 years at that point, and I was getting tired. There was a lot of repetition to the job. The news stories would mean I had to do this or that, and there wasn't a lot of variety happening. And I had an itch to kind of do comics more than I was in the past. And I think Matt was having a thing because he'd been at Marvel for a fair amount of time, and it felt like that was kind of ending as well.
Yeah, well, like I never stopped doing my own work, but I did much less of it, and it was getting to a place where I was sensing the fashion of the moment. I was kind of being shown the door gently, and was like, and now it's time. I literally had an index. I keep index cards on my desk that I write on constantly, and I had one with just slug lines of ideas for books that were not Marvel comics, and I
like Batman or Superman.
Exactly. What if? Yeah. What if? Now, hear me out. I should try and dig it up. I'm sure it's in a notebook somewhere. I tend to not throw things like that away. I don't think there's anything on there about sex criminals that became sex criminals, but like, surely you were you know what I mean? Like you were on my, that was, yeah. So yeah, it was time to start figuring out things to do that weren't, Thor or Iron Man. And
yeah, because I remember the day I approached Matt to do something, because here in Canada, again, I worked for a newspaper, and I had traveled to Ottawa to cover a boxing match between our current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and a senator, Patrick Brazeau. They're doing a charity boxing match.
Hang on, let me put a pin in there just real quick, because it was clear you were having some kind of Save the Tiger meltdown at the paper, because you were almost like a performance artist journalist. You were doing stunts and had personas, and would it was like every straight thing you did had these little cries for help. And
creativity was just
little small jokes. And then like you climbed the fucking Rogers Tower. What's that building called?
Well, City Hall. We did City Hall
as Spider-Man, and like you you started to do all these insane things as a journalist for the paper, and it was like, oh, he's losing his mind up there.
Yeah, I mean, partly is like you have a license at a newspaper to kind of do whatever you want. Like they've got to fill the pages every day.
Right.
Like the paper doesn't go out with blank pages.
Right.
So as I was getting more and more bored at the paper, I was pitching bigger and stupider things. I eventually kind of became a mascot for the paper in a weird way. But yeah, the boxing match was kind of like my final big thing, going to that. And I was kind of like, I stayed up all night interviewing people and drawing stuff out for a cartoon to report on it. And it was a lot, and I was super tired. And I also, the weird part was, we all recognized in the room when Trudeau beat up that senator that he was going to become the next prime minister, not because it's the law here, but there was a real sense in the room, like, oh, okay, he's proven himself. He's not just a pretty boy. He's going to be like the prime minister. Yeah. So that was weird too, being in the room for that. And so I stayed up all night kind of working on the project. And I think it was on the train trip back, just like sleep deprived. I emailed Matt and I was like, we should do something together. Just something dumb, whatever. And what I pitched him was, because our mutual friend, Edward J. Brubaker. Edwin, the crime author, loves Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, there's no greater crime than who stole that ring. That is his number one crime.
And I cannot tolerate Lord of the Rings stuff, and I think Matt maybe feels similar.
Yeah, no, the minute an elf gets on a horse, I fall asleep.
Yeah, I thought it'd be so funny if Matt and I did like a fantasy Lord of the Rings style book. Like it basically is like an inside joke,
right,
knowing nothing about fantasy, to just drive Ed crazy. And Matt wisely countered with the idea for sex criminals.
So you went from Lord of the Rings to sex criminals.
Yeah, and that whole, I remember I was taking the train trip back from Ottawa to Toronto, and we were just kind of going back and forth, and we'd fleshed out so much just on that trip. I remember Matt sending me like visual ideas, like videos of what happens to light when time slows down. And I think we came up with like John, Susie, Kegelface, the Sex Police, and it was all just kind of back and forth of like, what do you want to write? What do I want to draw?
Yeah.
Like, just like real pie in the sky stuff.
And there's like the sort of unspoken joke of the book is like, it's comics, everything is frozen in time. You know, the only reason our time is frozen is because we tell you it is, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I almost always remember when something stopped being ingredients and started being a meal. And I don't for Sex Criminals. It just one day, I think faced with the idea of having to write Lord of the Rings, an entire other book showed up.
Like anything but that.
Yeah. Or look, fine. Here's everything. Just take it and go. But it's crazy how much of it arrived, kind of just crash landed in a little spaceship that morning. Like,
it sounds almost like a complete project versus these snippets of things. It sounds like you just completely like gelled and it was boom, born, like Sex Criminals was born. It seems so you're making the collaboration sound very easy, and I'm sure it was not. Like, I'm sure it was a lot of work, but you're making it sound like, we just came up with it on a train ride. And
well, the big thing that changed was the tone,
right?
Because like when we were kind of pitching it back and forth to each other, it was just like, it was a dick joke book, right? It was just a wild, stupid idea that no one was going to read except for us. But like, there were still months and months after that where it was just phone calls and texts between Matt and myself, just kind of talking through what we knew about sex, basically, and relationships and like our personal histories, and
all the stories. That's the other thing too, is like 90% of the stuff in the book is like stories from people we know, you know, and
like our friend Tommy, who stops time when he has sex.
Exactly. It's the weirdest thing. It's just so strange.
It's a good thing he got included into the storyline, because that made it pretty interesting.
Thank God we met him.
Well, what I find so fascinating is that like it is this kind of, when you think about it and you hear about it, like when I first heard Sex Criminals, I'm like, oh boy, where are we going with this?
You know, we are masters,
familiar with your work.
we are masters of the single entendre.
and you don't really know what to expect, but what really amazes me is the underlying honesty of the book, not in just like the stories, but of course the letters at the end. And then just from what I know of Matt and if he's, you know, I've had him on the show before and he's like, nope, you can ask me anything. Like there's no secrets. I have no secrets. And obviously even within the writing and the art and what you guys have done, there's just like this unbelievable honesty. And I think that is what people just took to immediately. Like it was just this, it was obviously funny. And like that goes without saying, but I think the honesty there was kind of like refreshing.
Yeah. Thank you. First off. And that's the, like, I think my recall, and Chum, correct me, but I remember there actually being a whole other draft of the first issue that was John as the kind of, it was sort of John's story. And I wrote it and you read it. And my response to writing it was, I don't really want to do this book because it's a lot of work for dick jokes. And it's kind of, it wasn't anything more than dick jokes. And you were like, yeah, this is just kind of dick jokes. But like, that was like, there was a bad draft that led to the good draft because we had discovered, oh, there really is something here that's more than just sex jokes. Like we had stumbled into, like my recall is we had to kind of get it wrong internally and recognize like, oh, this isn't right yet, but there's something more than what we thought it was. And
I don't recall you writing that draft. I think we went back and forth on it for a while, and then one night I remember on the phone we were talking about it, and it was either you or myself that said, I think this is Susie's story. And that changed everything. Because the only changes between drafts I recall was there was the extra scene in the first draft of Susie at like grandma's house.
Right.
Lying face down, watching curling.
Right.
and then
well, that's a great comic.
story.
That is great. That is great comics. Who doesn't want a story about a 12-year-old girl watching curling on television? That's great comics.
But it was, and then she orgasmed watching curling,
Right.
which is a story lifted directly from my ex-wife. And then she walks outside. She sees the world frozen, and there's a lot of sadness there. But we already have the scene of her at the party as a teenager, having sex for the first time, and then walking out in the parties, frozen. So the big change there was, I think I said, we need something funny.
Right, we forgot the jokes. Right.
And so the bathroom scene is what came of that.
Right.
Between Susie and Rach.
Yeah, and finding
that was the big change.
Yeah, that was the big. We had the early versions were foul and sort of, and which is fine, which clearly makes the two of us laugh. But that sort of there was something more there that we knew, and like just comics are a lot of work. And like, if you don't, like, it sucks to not be into it. Like, if you're going to do this, you got to be into it. And so like, I remember kind of starting a little too much like the book you would assume it was, and then kind of overcorrecting and Chip being like, we're missing like a big funny, like there's an extra melancholy note here that we don't need, and we're missing something funny, that kind of like a big set piece pie fight kind of sequence. And then suddenly putting that in and realizing like, oh, this just balanced, and knowing then I still didn't think we were going to get to do more than like 4 issues, but at least it was more than just, sex jokes and stuff.
Yeah, because we ran the danger of, when it was announced and solicited for like retailers to order, the solicitation was like, hey, what's up, fart joke dick? It was very much like, hey, do you want a sex comedy? This is what it's going to be. It's called Sex Criminals. And between solicitation and when we finished the issue, it had changed so much. And we're like, oh, like the people that are going to come in looking just for like the dick jokes are going to be upset because it's a story about sexual awakening.
Feelings.
Yes.
And the people we want to read it, who would like that kind of story, aren't going to pick up the book because they're going to think it's just dick jokes.
Lewd
Sex Criminals.
Yeah.
And I like,
we were doomed from the beginning.
I had a repeated experience where, like it's like a sincere like anxiety and like of mine that like one day words are going to just start meaning different things to everybody else but me. And so like I'd had the experience of like explaining the book to Kelly Sue or like Brian Bendis, and like watching them like worry a little bit, but also just kind of have that like, okay, you know what, you've been doing superhero books for a few years and like you're not allowed to cuss, so like you're clearly getting something out of your system. It
was like Chip being Spider-Man on the building. You're like,
okay, we're just gonna let you have your kind of tantrum and then you'll come back. So I couldn't understand why, but and then I remember writing the PR and it was full of those it was full of entendre jokes and double meanings and things that like, Sex Criminals released at San Diego Comic-Con, things like that. And not realizing that like, oh, first off, it's the internet. Everyone's going to assume the worst all the time. Second, it's comics. No one has time for clever. And third, like, it's as though you would see me reading it earnestly to you and not realize what I was saying. And it doesn't play. It just reads like a bunch of dick jokes. And like, oh, I don't like, now you go back and you read it and it's, that's the like I said, the joke is it's a single entendre. And so we just kind of, it was a mess to begin with, and it's an impossible book to sell. And we just figured, well, we'll get our 4 issues and we'll have a thing that we are proud of and are delighted by. And, that'll be great for us. And then you can go back, I can go back to superheroes and you can go back to the newspaper, and we'll have another year or two before we start literally climbing buildings again.
And then 7 years later, dot. Well, I think that's what's amazing is when there's a collaboration that starts out for just you as the creator. Like this was kind of for yourselves, right? It's something that you wanted to do. When you're trying to create for others all the time, especially working at one of the bigger publications, it's for someone else. Essentially always, right? And so I think there's that's why there was this just like magnetism, and it just kind of exploded. But then so after those 4 issues and then, oh my gosh, now we're gonna have to come up with XYZ. Like how did that kind of look to you going, oh, now we need a real like an ending? Or did you always kind of know where you were headed with the story? Because it has been like turn after turn, and I absolutely, if it's not already apparent, like love the whole thing. I love Sex Criminals. I always tell people about it, and I get the same thing. I'm like, oh wait, no, let me explain. Right. And then I'm just like, just trust me and read it is really what I come down to. I don't even try to explain the whole storyline because it sounds weird coming out of my mouth. I'm like, yeah, so
it sounds weird out of anybody's mouth.
I'm never able to explain it quite right.
I have to take the sweater off. I'm sorry, I'm dying.
It's okay. But it looked very official and you know, in the beginning. It's good.
I think there was no road plan beyond the first trade, the first 5 issues.
I think you can see that wobble in that first arc, I think, where it becomes clear, oh, we're going to get to keep going. And it kind of wobbles a little bit as we recalibrate, because like the first issue, I think we were done with issue 3 at least by the time 1 came out. I think, you know what I mean? Like I seem to remember working on 4 when 1 was released. And having to kind of recalibrate 4 and 5, because at that point it was clear, oh, we're going to be able to just keep going.
Yeah. And also like the month of issue 1 leading into issue 2, it was so unexpected it doing that well that I think the pressure kind of hit us too.
Yeah. And then
like, oh, not only do we have to keep going, it's got to be of a quality.
And then like it's just one of those things that like you can't plan. But you know, I had been kind of shown the door at Marvel as is wont to happen, right? It's cyclical there, and had been given kind of titles that were not expected to perform that then overperformed, and in a very like, say, it sort of kept me there for a couple extra years, and you know, like, so Hawkeye was happening, and FF, and these 2 books are kind of exploding, and kind of transforming one aspect of my career. And then Sex Criminals happens and kind of immediately finds, you know, like suddenly there's these 2 things happening in tandem, and it's like, it felt like not just catching lightning in a bottle, but catching 2 bolts of lightning in 2 bottles at the same time. You know, it was just sort of like, and then like it kept selling out and going back to press and going back to press. And then like Chip had this ongoing conversation with Applebee's that went viral, and then suddenly it was just like a thing where one weekend like 1.5 million people read about Chip talking to Applebee's, and then Apple banned our 2nd issue, and at that point it was like we were on the bottom rung of an entirely new ladder, you know, sort of just in terms of attention and eyes and look, it's original comics, right? Chip and I own it. We don't have overhead, you know. It would not be in Marvel or DC's interest to publish a book that sold what Sex Criminals sold. Not because it wasn't losing money, but it wasn't making enough money, right? Because there are thousands of people and a 10,000 foot office space that needs power and light, and you know. But with us, it's like, hey, we paid for printing. Everything else is bonus, right? Everything else is gravy. Yeah. But suddenly we had a hit, like a profound, crazy, and a lot. It just sort of.
I mean, and the awards and everything too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Retention, right? Winning the Eisner and.
Yeah, and then sort of the only thing either of us knew that we could keep doing was being honest, for better or for worse, right? Like, this is what got us here. And it's the thing that saved the book. It's the thing that made the book not be just gross sex jokes. It's the thing that made the book not be puerile or purient, right? Is this kind of the heart, right? And I think there's like in the last letter column, I was finally able to articulate this. Somebody said, like, don't you find all all of your emotions get in the way? And I was like, no, emotions don't get in the way. Emotions are the way. Like it's so with kind of the only thing we knew was like, well, if we're honest, it works. Let's keep being honest, which is a weird, like, I don't know how to, all of it is unreplicable. You know what I mean? It's just it felt like a sequence of phenomena happening that light and heat and timing all kind of happening at one thing, and off we went.
Yes.
Yeah, like the first year, it felt like every day or two there was some other big thing that happened around the book. Whether it's selling out of this, a new printing of that, or an article, or the banning, or like awards and stuff. Like
Time magazine, it was the comic of the year in Time magazine. It's how my parents found out I was writing it, was because it was in Time magazine.
Wow.
It was so ludicrous. I remember the morning volume 1 of the collection appeared on the New York Times bestseller list. It was like number 1 in comics and graphic novels. I just called Matt, and we were both just kind of quiet, and then I just started laughing, and then he started laughing, and we just laughed. It's insane.
Wow. But I mean, it's so well deserved, but I could see where from that origin to up until that point, especially, you're like, wow, this is like, now it's really, really a thing. And does that then put a lot of pressure, or do you continue to just say, no, we're going to keep having fun and doing it our way? Or does all the acclaim make it harder then to create?
It's easier for me as the artist. Like my goal is always just to impress Matt and make Matt laugh with like background gags and stuff.
Yeah, and that's
I don't show Matt anything of an issue until it
shows up. It just shows up.
Until it's colored.
Okay.
Because all my jokes go into the color stage. I'm like, I don't show them black and white because it's missing all this stuff. So I it's not how it's done in comics. And as a writer, I would hate it. It happened to be that way. But yeah, just dumping it all.
I was thinking about this morning
for the reaction.
I was thinking about this morning, actually. I don't remember where we were flying, but we were flying somewhere, and you had finished an issue as I was getting on the plane. And like, so not only am I was dealing with bad airport internet, but then like I'm inside of a plane switching back to cellular, trying to get this PDF before the door closes, because it's like I'm going to be on we might have been going like to Ireland. It might have been a long flight, but it's like all like there's a new, I just gotta, and like it happened, and I got the issue, and like the joy of being the first person in the world to read it on a plane, and I remember there was John was remembering seeing somebody have sex in a car. And you had drawn a guy's just whole ass smashed against you saw the whole business and everything, and like blowing it up on my phone, because it was just a small detail on the panel, and blowing it up on the phone and just sitting there basically with a drawing of a butthole and a taint, laughing, and my wife looking over at me and just being like, you're on a plane, people walking by, like. It was just the best, and it wasn't.
It's what she signed up for.
Yeah.
And I think so. It's easier for me because Matt was always my primary audience, and it's harder for Matt because I'm his first audience. Like, because I have the same thing with Matt's scripts. Like, I get excited that I'm the first to read this, and like,
they're very epistolary. They're very much like letters, anyway.
Yeah, it's a good conversational, and but Matt also. Especially as the series goes on and you get the letters from people and you realize what it means to them, Matt's got the extra pressure of where do you take the characters? How do you tackle subjects? Whereas as the artist, I just got to sit back and draw taints.
I had, in parallel with this kind of career success, and there's no other word for it. We had a really bad span of years where like all of the top branches of my family tree was like decimated by cancer, and just all kinds of bad thing, one after the next, kind of happening, leading to a kind of reckoning with my own mental health, and going through all of that during all of this. And there was I think part of the delay in the book kind of being more regular was there were times where I just needed to live a little bit more and have a little bit more therapy and think things through for myself before I could kind of write it out. You know what I mean? So that was more than pressure or expectation, just the reality of like, I remember I shared this story with my therapist this week when the New York Times bestseller list thing happened, and I told my parents saw it. My dad talked to me. He's like, "Hey, listen, there's no shame in that. You're putting food on the table and you're feeding your family as though it were actual pornography." And I was like, "Yeah, no, Dad, no, it's Dad. Look, it's the New York Times. They don't have a best-selling porno list, buddy. This it was the weirdest like.
It's legitimate.
Yeah, but it was like, listen, there's no shame in this. You're feeding your family. You're putting food on the table and a roof over your head. Don't be ashamed. I'm like, I'm the opposite.
Meanwhile, my parents put up a giant sex criminals poster in their kitchen.
Aww. But then Chip is right. The pressure and anxiety I felt was only writing the letter column. I was convinced every time I only opened the inbox the day we were doing the letter column. So it would be closed for sometimes months at a time. So it was not a regular kind of place for correspondence, and I don't think I will ever go back to it. And I would open it up the day it was time for the letter column. Like, oh, this is it. This is the month you lose everybody. This is the month where you have betrayed and hurt people who believed in you and thought you were speaking a language similar to their own. And now that it was just all of that. That was the only pressure, anxiety I felt, was like the letters made it. Like we had such an immediate, not just the volume of response, but like the depth.
Yeah.
Like the letters reflected the book. People would write in sharing all of these insane, wonderful stories that were heartbreaking or funny or embarrassing. You know what I mean? And it was sort of through the letter column, I think, that for me anyway, that I recognized, oh, this is really what the book is about. We're sort of in the book, it's like, oh, we're all alone together. That's this thing. We all have to experience this in our own ways, regardless of what the destination is. There are no roadmaps. There's no guidance. In the end, you have to explore it. And the place you end up might not be the place you stay. And there's that we all share that kind of commonality of experience. And that kind of was the gift of the letters for me was really, the letters helped me understand the book more. And the
readers in the letters were so fantastic. Like, especially meeting readers at conventions. It's funny, I was thinking about this recently, just how Matt and I have had the opposite experiences, because Matt was doing a lot of Marvel work before this. So he was used to a particular type of reader at conventions, like maybe people who've been reading X-Men for 20 years and hate the X-Men and hate what you've done, but they're getting you to sign the book anyways.
Oh, you shouldn't be writing this. You shouldn't be writing this. Can you make it out to Craig?
Right.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, sex criminals readers who are just like open and honest and wonderful, and they're so nervous to meet you, and like it's this amazing thing.
Lots of hugs.
So that was
Lots
my
of
first.
Hugs.
Yeah, but that was like kind of my first big comics thing. So I'm just like, oh, comics are great, and then I started writing Marvel books.
What do you mean?
And I'm starting to get those guys.
You're like,
guys that I remember.
oh, this is where.
No Daredevil readers want to hug you.
Well, some do, but
I remember
different kind of hugs.
Yeah,
there's no way this doesn't sound like boasting, and there were a couple of moments when even being the Marvel guy, right? Even having those experiences of like being on the Marvel stage at San Diego, surrounded by Tony Stark's Hall of Armor, signing Iron Man posters and shit like that. Like all of that. I remember the New York Comic Con, where there's the first Brimp Up, where the Sex Criminals readers organized a party, walking to it from my hotel, like passing where the DC party was, and seeing it, it's like, wow, that's crazy. That's a whole party for DC Comics. Look at that. And then the party we had was bigger.
Yeah.
And that was we were the line where there was our panel and the X-Men panel at Emerald City, and we were like, oh, that's got to be the X-Men line, and it was our line, and it was just like, there's a up is down, black is white, bizarro world kind of. Like we found an audience outside of comics, I think, is the thing.
But
that's a big thing.
I think also, that's a big thing. But I think it's, again, with the honesty, but from a reader standpoint, like you said, there's this total difference in your fandom, right? And it's this way that you've connected so intimately. I mean, just the letter column, like we could spend another hour talking about the letter column. It's just, but I think, that connection is a true connection, which is why you get all those hugs and that unbelievable honesty. So it's like, of course you have the, oh, I hate what you did to the X-Men, but sign my book anyway. That's very typical in this very, broad and general superhero world. And I can only imagine why your parties were so big. And I mean, they're true fans, right? You say like, you only need X amount of true fans versus like the fluffy, I'm sort of a fan, whatever kind of thing. I'm for sure you guys have true fans.
It definitely feels like we don't have the biggest readership in the world, but I think we've met them all. You know what I mean? Like it's and it's more meaningful. Like it's just way more meaningful.
Well, they definitely want themselves to be known. They want to know you. They want to meet you. And so for the letters though, do you, because it seems like that takes us longer than maybe even doing the issue. It's just like, do you publish all the letters, or do you have to be selective at the end of the day? Because it's so many. I feel like you include so many people.
Yeah, there sort of tends to be, guys all try to be funnier than we are, and rarely are. So
right.
So that's
you're like,
part of it.
Leave the
well, it's not that the letters from women aren't funny, but like guys would try to write in and joke, and ultimately it's like we've got the jokes covered at this point, even if they were great. So no, I would just kind of go and look for, and sometimes I liked running letters that were opposite one another, or that would speak to a plurality of experiences. There were some great letters that we didn't run because maybe they were too personal or sort of, I'm sorry, I forgot to make my phone stop making noise. But there was a degree of editorial, but it was much more about, I don't even want to say quality, but I guess quality. And then just kind of how it all fit together as a whole. And also too, like, hey, here's a really great letter that's profoundly moving and honest and open, and completely makes, I don't know how to follow it. Like it is a show-stopping piece of honest writing, and it would feel awful to tell jokes after. It feels weird having made jokes before. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's that, or it's just kind of.
I would imagine it'd be quite a challenge. And then Chip, you say, oh, he has the hard part, but I'm not sure. Drawing genitals all day to me sounds pretty challenging. It's like, is there like research in that, or do you just kind of have it all in your head?
It's as easy as anything can be.
But there was
there's a lot of just sexy research and not sexy research for sure. Like,
remember the shingles poster?
Yeah, I had to look up shingles, which was great fun. The page where Anna's getting ready to go out, and it's like 64 panels. I had to basically research every one of those, and like there was one point where it's like she's like waxing her asshole. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? So I'm looking at videos, like instructional videos on how to do it. I'm like, I'm doing it for like one of 64 panels.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
That was
So do
yeah,
you have to
there was
like
a montage
clear?
of a woman getting ready for a night out, and like the panels just got
Yeah.
smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller with all the zillions of things. And yeah. I remember one time, this is the difference. This is why I will work with Chip on anything at any time for the rest of my life. I remember writing something at one point that was dependent on a style of hat being worn to transmit the time period it was happening in. And the art came back with no hats. And I wrote the artist like, oh, they need the hats. Like that's how we sell the thing. And the artist responded like, yeah, I don't draw hats. And meanwhile, Chip is like, hang on a second. What does a shingle really look like under the surface, or how does one wax one's own butthole? Pouring.
I was thinking Chip must have to like clear out his cache and cookies and whatever after every researching thing, because you're going to get all these crazy ads on your computer.
Yeah, a lot of private browsers. Yeah. I'll tell you that much.
We're
Thank God
either
for VPN.
between everything that I've researched, between writing Iron Man and Sex Criminals, it's a miracle I'm allowed onto an airplane at all.
Right?
Yeah, it's funny whenever when I'm in my browser and I'm looking at bookmarks, I'm always surprised because I don't want to delete it, because if I delete it, it's over. I have one bookmark which is like Pornhub.com Antonio, and it's like this slender Czechoslovakian gay man, and like it's his point of view, it's just like a guy talking to him, trying to pick him up, bring him back to his place, and it's my model for Badal's boyfriend for that whole issue. Like I really wanted a specific type, and I wanted to make sure I got the body correct. So I just like, well, I'm just gonna just look up some gay porn of like some thin gay gentleman, and it's like I still have this bookmark, and I'm like, I don't want to delete it.
No, I don't want
to delete it.
That's
my last gay bookmark. I don't want to delete it.
Yeah, I guess the good news is like the internet is made for porn, so it's all out there. Whatever you might need to research is easily researched.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It's very accessible. But I mean, on that regard, like, you know, you're having trouble kind of deleting this bookmark and kind of letting go. I mean, it has been several years of a journey. Is it that bittersweet? Are you relieved to be completed and moving on, or is it more sadness?
Well, for me, it's a mixture. Like drawing the book is a full-time job that I don't think I'm doing well at every moment, and that's hard. It takes up a lot of energy. So there are moments in each issue where I'm just like, I'm banging my head against the wall. I'm just like, I'm upset. I'm upset at Matt for making me draw this. I'm upset at myself for not being able to draw it. I'm upset at the world for wanting this. And then I hit different stages where I'm like, oh, actually I figured it out. Oh, that's great. Oh, I did it. I'm just elated. And then I crash again because there's another page. And it takes a lot of time. And so there is definitely kind of a weight off, knowing that I don't have to draw ever again. Maybe.
I don't know about that.
But then there's also just the sadness, like drawing. Do you ever look at YouTube videos of like the final day on set for people?
Oh, yeah.
Like on your favorite TV shows,
Yes.
like, you know, that's a wrap for Julia Louis.
Series wrap,
Yes.
and everybody
On
weeps
Veep.
and
Oh my
applauses,
God, the Veep one was awesome.
Yeah, and they do it for each of the characters.
Yes.
And I had that for each of the characters as I would draw them, and I'd be like, that's the final time I'm drawing this character. And then I would cry. And if there was someone to clap, I would clap. But then I'd move on. And like by the time it came down to, because I draw every issue in order, panel to panel. I never skip around unless something makes that to be the case. So the final page of John and Susie was the final page I drew. It's the final time drawing the characters. I was like, all right. And I finish it, and I walk into the house, and I cry, and my wife holds me. I'm just like, that's so weird. but you're never fully done with it too. I realized because then I got to color the thing and letter it.
Right.
You know, we're sending off to the printer. We're doing corrections. Like we did the trade. We're gonna do the hardcover. Like
every time, how many times we just keep saying goodbye? It's like for the very third time.
Yeah, but it's also nice knowing that it'll be what I'm remembered for, and I have no problem with that. Like that'll be the top line of my obituary for sure.
Yeah, sex criminal.
Criminal
Chip Zdarsky, sex criminal,
has passed away of unknown causes.
Bringing a sorrowful 2020 to an end.
But I'm so proud of it. Like that I'm not even like, my mind isn't even on like the idea of the sophomore slump or anything. Like, oh, how do I follow this up?
Oh, you're never gonna. It's impossible. Yeah.
No. And I'll have fun. Maybe I'll draw a thing down the line. I mean, you know, Matt and I did a little Batman story. That was kind of the only other thing I've drawn this year. And then, you know, things will be fun. Some things might work. Some things might not work. But there's no way anything's going to reach this level for me. And that's fine. Yeah. And if I'm doing sketches of Susie when I'm 70 at comic conventions,
holy shit, that'd be amazing.
I can't think of anything better. I really can't.
I had a phase a few years, and it kind of corresponded with that bad 5 years where a lot of what I was writing ended, and I kind of emotionally wasn't prepared for it. And entered it and sort of had a real depressive spell. And some of it was because the work was dark or ended poorly, and it was just a lot of goodbyes, and like I was saying goodbye to family, and like I wasn't equipped for it. I didn't know how, you know. And as it so happened, as this year kind of came into focus and quarantine happened, like I realized everything I had to write was goodbyes. Everything I was writing was conclusions, you know. And so I had the time to kind of start to take the tools that I'd kind of learned how to use, having survived that first thing, and start to plan for it and kind of process it and work through it and understand that, like, it's not over when it's done, and it's not over because you think it's over, and it's not good because you think it's good, and it's not bad because you think it's bad, and tomorrow will feel, you know what I mean? Like I just kind of had a bunch of, I came into it armed, but left Sex Criminals deliberately as the last thing to say goodbye to, because it felt so momentous. And the sort of the series ends with issue 30, and that's kind of its own. That's the end, really, to the book. But then there's a coda. Our last issue is like a flash forward, and it's a kind of very much a grace note, very much. We're flashing forward 3.5 years and seeing where people ended up, you know. So I kind of had a chance to say goodbye on two different levels, you know. I kind of had a heavy, meaningful, emotional goodbye, and then now I get to write the happy or happy enough endings for everyone, and sort of deliberately make a point out of saying goodbye and saying farewell and making the whole issue. It takes place at a wedding, and so it's all about people saying that they love each other and they're going on to the next chapter in their lives. You know what I mean? It was very meta. It was so, but all of it designed to kind of emotionally process saying goodbye to this book that changed my life. You know, our lives forever, careers, everything.
I think there's also there's a subconscious fear with the book ending that well, that's it for Matt and I.
Right.
And we just won't it's not a real thing, but you know, since the book ended, we still text every day. Nothing's actually changed except we don't owe each other anything.
Right. If anything, it's better because there's not the pressure of you're waiting for script or I'm waiting for pages. You know, it's way easier to just goof around now. I don't feel like I'm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Your jokes can be just jokes for the sake of
there's no
jokes.
subtext.
You don't have to go, wait, is this going into the thing? Or that last the Grace Note, that issue was really that bittersweet for us, for me as a reader. I don't know about all the other readers. I can't speak on everyone's behalf, but it was literally like, the final issue that ended. Of course, I'm exclaiming out loud, and my husband, he's behind. He hasn't finished reading yet, and I'm like, ah! And then I read the Grace Note, and I'm kind of feeling good, but it is that bittersweet, like you said, happy or happy enough ending, and it to me, even though we talked about like the tone of the story, at the end of the day, for me, there was just that love story, there that as well, and what happens with love and what happens with life. And that last panel, I was just so overwhelmed and felt like I was on that journey with you all, and reading the letters at the end, there was just a lot of emotion. Plus it was a really emotional week because, of course, I read it last week, which was election week here. I had a bunch of milestone things happening.
Shit, there was an election? I gotta vote. I'll be right back.
There's so much emotion, right? Well, they won't count that, obviously, because we don't count all votes in America.
Yeah. And even without the election, but just writing it in quarantine, the idea.
Yes, COVID-19.
It was such a vacation to be able to write characters on a vacation, and then it became like, all right, it's a comic. It doesn't have to be that they're at a Ramada Inn. And like, it just became more and more fantastic. And where do I wish I was right now? Oh, an island paradise, whatever, a spa resort with all my friends. Like that would just became, no one's wearing masks and everybody's hugging. And like,
but it's a real wish fulfillment stuff.
But like this is a perfect example of how Chip makes everything better that he touches. The initial kind of draft was them on the beach, kind of watching the sunset. Because that's what endings are. You ride off into the sunset, and like, Chip was like, well, wait, well, sort of time wise, if they're at this thing and it's over, like it would be sunrise. Is that okay? And it's so much better and smarter and more to the point, because that's what it's about, is the next day starting and not the old day ending. You know what I mean? It's just like, that's so much better than what I had and what I come up with. And what I came up with is very first thought and very cliched and sort of just finding that little way. And then there's no way that you can tell, oh, well, they're facing east, so it's a sunrise. But just conceptually, it kept the book more true to what was really going on. And it's just that kind of, my favorite part of the issue is that, no, they're watching a sunrise, not a sun, and that's all Chip,
Yeah, the beauty is it's on an island, so I could just have them walk in any direction.
Right.
Sunrise, sunset. But there's some subtle.
Oh shit, that would have been funny if there was like a sign with the arrows and like Sunrise Peak and Sunset Corner. Shit, we gotta pulp the run. We gotta make one last fix.
Yeah, I thought it was important too. Like, it didn't specify in the script, but I wanted the shot to be from behind them, looking at the sunrise too, because I thought that was important. We'd had, because the page previous we had a lot of shots of them from the front, but the idea of like kind of facing forward with them felt important too. These are like the things that no one will notice, no one will care. Like,
I don't think so. I think those are the subtle things always are the ones that the polish, it's the one that it's what brings out the story. So no, it was beautifully done all around, both.
I also think just speaks to the, like, I knew that shot was going to be from behind them. And you know what I mean? Like, oh, we know each other well enough. And like that's the shot to find, right? That's the shot. It's the color, it's the sky, it's the sun, and it's them holding hand. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, no, that's the shot. Like I knew. Yeah, that was kind of the cool thing, is the telepathy between us came very quickly. The jokes were the surprises, but the storytelling stuff was like
the thing you hope for on something like this. And we're blessed in a sense of just two of us too. Right. So there's less kind of moving parts. Right. It's trusting each other, but also knowing that the other person is really thinking about it. Like when I get a script from Matt, it's like, oh, he has thought about this. Like you can tell the amount of like the work before the work that's gone into this. And as an artist, I just want to make sure that I'm thinking about it as well. Sometimes it's annoying, I think. Like, I'll probably get back to Matt with like a lot of questions and like, well, if they're doing this, can we do this? And stuff like that. But like, I much prefer that kind of back and forth over, sometimes on the Marvel books, you get the page back from an artist and it's like, they just didn't think. They looked at the script, they saw some key things and they drew it. But it's like, it's a collaborative process. They got to kind of bring something to it as well and see what needs to be enhanced or brought out. Like all I've ever hoped to do with Sex Criminals is to enhance what Matt's intentions are on the page. And
I pride myself, I guess, in if my kind of lifelong comics fandom has served me in my career at all, it's in being able to, just as someone who loves the medium, write for a collaborator as a fan. Like, what do I want to see as a reader? What would make me most happy as a fan of, because I've, like, almost everybody I've ever worked with, I've been a fan of and have been aware of them before working with them. And so like every script is like it's not just writing the script, it's writing the script for Chip. And I would write it differently for anybody else in the world. But like that kind of, how can I, just as a fan of Chip, as somebody who thinks he's the funniest fucking guy in the world and like a fabulous cartoonist, like how do I get out of his way, So much of it is just writing it as a fan, not just as a friend, like the friend, everything else is true, but just like as a like, what would be hilarious, what would Chip kill? I remember there was a bit where somebody had like a long monologue and I had like written it knowing I was going to cut it down. It was really just one of those things, like I'd written it for myself, like this is what they mean, now cut out everything, Yeah. But it had the idea, like there's a lot of that in comics now. There's a lot of big blobs of text everywhere. It's kind of a dates, I think, where we're at right now. A little bit like how like lens flares and gradient fills used to, like it feels like a dated, like there's just lots of text blobs right now. And the idea of like, oh, if it's just wrecking havoc in the background and like knocking somebody out of a window and crushing something, like, oh, the Chip would, that's just a little bit of business that, and just kind of writing it and handing it over and being like, all right, yeah, you're gonna like, and it killed me. I don't care if it made anybody else laugh. I found it fucking hilarious because all the stuff that how you made it work, right, was so much better than what I could have ever written or asked someone to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, chum.
Yeah.
Well, clearly.
Why did we end the book?
I know.
We're coming. We're back.
We're back, baby.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it shows, the collaborative effort was phenomenal, and that you guys do have this telepathy. So does it then spoil you for, obviously you're both going to continue creating. Does it spoil you because you have this like shorthand, you have this, oh, you know what I mean? Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I think there's this, this telepathy you guys have. Does it make it then harder to kind of work outside of this zone that you've created?
It's tricky to imagine what it would be like. Like I've only ever drawn for Matt,
mm-hmm.
really. Like that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was one like a 4-page script for a Marvel thing
mm-hmm.
that Mark Waid wrote, like a jokey thing that I drew. But that doesn't count. Mark Waid, whatever.
That one guy.
Yeah, but it's part of me wants to see what it would be like.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've only slept with one person, and I kind of want to know what it's like.
Yeah, no.
And it was great. The sex was great.
Yeah.
Sex was fantastic.
As far as you know. As far as you know.
As far as I know, right. So there is the question in the back of my head, just like, what would it be like to actually work with a different writer
mm-hmm.
and see what would happen there? But I'm also just like, I know it wouldn't be as good. So
well, but you're also
do I want to get into that?
Yeah, but you also write, so you still it's just collaboration in general though. So it's obviously
gonna be like I could write a thing that I would draw, but I think about that often, and that it would be lonely,
mm-hmm.
and that I also wouldn't get it done because I'm not
pushing
there's
you.
there's nobody that I'm trying to like frankly impress.
Mm-hmm.
and also not let down by blowing the deadlines. Like when it's just one person without like some superhuman drive, like it's hard to make comics. And I'd worry it'd be lonely. Like, who do I text?
Well, you'd still text Matt.
I probably would, but it'd just be like,
oh, this fucking artist I'm working with.
What do you think of this? Yeah, what do you think of this panel? What can I do here? Yeah, this fucking artist I'm working with.
Do you find that writer you writes into the process just of making comics, having also drawn them when you write for other people? Like, how do you, when you're writing for somebody as an artist, as a working professional who does this thing, like, how do you communicate to, or do you just reduce it and kind of, like, I guess I've seen some of your scripts, and it doesn't seem to have, you're not like art directing from the page, really. I mean, you're really writing kind of pure noun verb stuff. There's not a lot of called shots and things like that. But then, like, where does the visual artist experience in you come about in your process of writing for other people?
It's probably half and half called shots. Like if there's something really specific I want, like it's through here, it's this angle or whatever, like I'll definitely do that. And it depends on the artist as well. Like, you know that, like sometimes you need to have more art direction, sometimes less art direction. I haven't been able to let go as much as Jeff Lemire does. Like, I don't know if you know about his process. Like
he's just like basically super skeletal, right?
Like I don't think he doesn't call his shots, I don't think. But then, like, I think no matter what they send back to him, he's just like, great.
Yeah.
Because he's just like, oh, I trust the artist. Like, if it's not what I want, like, well, it's what the artist wants, so that's fine. And then, you know, in the scripting, I think he like massages it. I don't think it's quite Marvel plot style, but I can't quite let go that much. Like, I'm still, like, this morning I got a page back from Marco, the artist on Daredevil, and he wasn't quite getting the emotion of what I needed. So, like, you know, I sent a photo of me doing the motion and like kind of sketched a little bit over it to kind of show what I'm thinking. And, you know, I feel like a total asshole when I do it.
Right. But I tend to, unless there's some visual storytelling beat that's just straight missed, I tend to not ask for changes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's all storytelling stuff.
Yeah.
It's all storytelling.
Yeah.
It's all like, is this harming the story?
And that was purely a function of, first off, just when you write and when you own your own comics, like, nobody's getting paid. So, like, I just never felt comfortable asking someone to do more work for free because I failed in the script to indicate what was needed. And then just like at Marvel at one point, I remember getting into something on Iron Man. It was me and Warren Simons, the editor, and Salvador LaRocca, and Salva was like, don't ask me to change things because of taste. But, like, if I've missed a beat, like, no, tell me, like, I got to fix it. Right. If I, you know, like, and he had, and if you could point out and say, like, no, we need to see him pick this up. That was the important part of the panel. And some people like, oh, I got lost and I was excited to draw the thing. And you know what I mean? Like, stuff like that, he would change. But, like, but if it's like, you know, do you want, you know, camera one or camera two? Like, let me do my job. And it's like, yeah, right. Yeah. Keep the train running for that stuff.
The first time I wrote for someone else was Joe Quinones for Howard the Duck, issue 1. And when I got the layouts back, I was upset because it wasn't what I had in mind.
Right.
Because I visualized the whole thing as I'm writing the script, because I'm an artist. I'm just like, well, I know exactly what this panel should look like, what that panel should look like. And I could see areas where I would view things that he did as shortcuts, or, you know, or just not what I would do. And I was like, how do I relay this back to him? How do I fix this? And then I stepped back and I looked at the pages again. I'm like, oh no, he's drawing it like him.
Right.
Like, that's fine. What he's done is fine. And in a lot of cases, he's made much better choices than I would have. So I kind of have to get out of his way here. So I kind of called, I made a choice after that to call the shots when it's really important to the story and to not when it's not. Every artist is different. Like Chris Anka on Star-Lord, he just didn't want any art direction for fight scenes. I'm like,
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not gonna outright Chris Anka's hand anyway. So.
No, yeah. The fight scene starts here. It ends there. This is the dialogue that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Have at it. Every artist is different. So
yeah,
that's the fun part of collaboration too. That starts to feel like it's really of the two of you when you get something back that surprises you and like, oh, and look, and my process lately is de-writing once art comes back. Like I try to get rid of as much of myself from the page as I possibly can, to the point of almost austerity and sparseness. Just wanting to make the stuff more visual and more of a visual experience rather than a red one, that makes sense. I will say too, like working at Marvel, if I'm teamed with a new artist and they're clearly a new artist, I will have notes on every page at the layout stage at the very least. And that's more of I want to help them. Because it's not even like this isn't a taste thing. This is like, oh, I think if you want to keep doing this job, like here's what's wrong here, and here's how you can make it better. And almost all my notes are take it or leave it. Yeah.
Like, here's suggestions. Take it or leave it. And some artists will be like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it my way. I'm like, oh, it's fine. That's totally fine.
You're dead to me.
Yeah.
Have you ever taught, Chip?
A little bit, yeah. I taught cartooning 101 like maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
At a like continuing ed college, and then later on I taught sequential narrative, so comics for a couple semesters. And it was fascinating because I think I learned as much as the students did, because you have to start to think, well, why do I do it that way? You dissect your own work to make it work.
Yeah, I was going to ask you like what you kind of learned about yourself in the process, because teaching is very much, oh, I'm the one learning here kind of thing. Yeah.
The big thing I learned too, because I was teaching the comic course at OCAD, which is the College of Art in Ontario. And it was for illustration students, but it was an elective. So I had like marketing and advertising students and graphic designers in there as well.
Yeah.
And the ones who did the best were the non-illustrators.
Really?
Because the illustrators at that point, they were like third year, whatever, they thought they knew everything. And so they would just keep submitting stuff that was bad or wrong. and whereas the jewelry students were like, oh, this is cool, I want to learn.
Right.
They would actively learn how to tell a story properly. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then, I find that kind of carries over a bit to comics. Like if there's somebody who's been doing it for a long time, like chances are I'm not going to give them a note, because I don't expect them to take the note.
I see. Yeah, I'm a martial artist, and it's very like philosophical for us to constantly be like, no, our cup's empty, because like once you think you know anything, then you have nothing left to learn. And so those art students that come in their third year and like, oh, what is this Chip guy now? Or they think they've already learned what they need because they've gotten from A to B, forgetting that there's like X amount more letters in the alphabet type of thing. So, I would imagine, like you said, it's like that in the world of comics. But at the same time, I feel like a part of that collaborative effort is successful when there's more communication. And it sounds to me, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, some people you work with are like really open to it and wanting to have more dialogue or back and forth, and others are like, all right, just give me your pages and I'm good to go. Is it just dependent on the person?
Yeah. I mean, and it's not even a slight to the people who are just doing the work.
Yeah.
Like, it's a job. Like, especially if you're working for Marvel or DC, like you got a mortgage to pay and you're just doing pages as fast as you can. And
it's a craft, you know what I mean?
Asshole writer here is like making you, redo it or like think about the page more. Like, well, fuck no, the page is fine.
I like writing, what's called plot style. I because I find it far more collaborative. It kind of you kick a big can down the road in terms of work. It's really only half the job that a writer's going to have. And I always think it's going to be different. Like because I wrote standard script, kind of panel 1, this happens, here's the words. Panel 2, this happens, here's the words. And so I'm so used to getting the art back being, and now it's time to proof and rewrite. that it's like, oh no shit, now I have to literally script the whole thing. But I find it far more collaborative. But at the same time, like I was certain that Mike Allred would want to work like that, because that's how Jack Kirby worked, right? And I was sure Allred, in his kind of like lionization of Kirby, would want that experience. And he's like, no, I just want you to tell me exactly what you want. I was like, oh, okay, well, I can do that. I can do that too, right? Because it's some people need that fence, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I know you guys are unbelievably generous with your time. I'm sure you both have other things to get going, but I was wondering, Matt, and am I right or wrong in that you have this piercing story with the two of you that has to do with sex criminals, or am I wrong?
No. Yeah. That was
what
we had a we had a launch party at a sex club in Toronto, and sex clubs in Canada are real different than strip clubs in America. In America, there's strip clubs. In Canada, these are sex clubs. So the idea was we're going to have a launch party at a sex club. Chip and I are going to be the creeps. Like we're going to be the weirdos. Like it's just like everything else. It is an inappropriate. It is a mixture of two. Like this is the wrong place to launch this book, right?
Yeah,
and
still it is my friends and family in attendance.
Right. Yeah. Like literally, Chip's mom and dad were there. Your brother was your brother there too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and like Tiffy and Alex, the models, and like the only time I met Kate Beaton, to my in everlasting horror. But we just Chip dressed up as Garfield was going to read erotic poetry that he wrote about Batman, and I was going to get my nipples pierced on stage. Which ended up being a Jim Rose Circus sideshow kind of thing, where the club was over capacity, there was no ventilation.
Oh yeah, it was hot.
And like the thing was, they had 200 copies of the book at the door, and the thing was, when you're out of the copies, that means the club is full. They got rid of the copies and just kept letting people in. Wow. So it was a whole I got one titty stabbed off on stage, and if I didn't entirely lose consciousness, like I was going down the tunnel. You know what I mean? It was a real thing. So we stopped it at one, and then later I got the matching set. I got the match when I got back home, just because the asymmetry was driving my OCD. But yeah, so that was our kind of promotional event was. Come to a sex club, don't have sex, listen to poetry from Chip in a Garfield suit, and watch Matt get his boobie stabbed off.
Yeah, so the sex club, there were 4 levels to it. We were occupying 2 of the levels. The level that was kind of like the free for all sexy club part, and then the part above, which was the just sex part, like it's just beds. And when Matt got into the chair to get the piercing, we thought it'd be fun to get my parents up, and my mom especially, to hold Matt's hand while he got it done. But my parents were up on the sex floor.
Oh my gosh.
So they missed that. And I remember so I'm like, okay. But there was like a sex advice columnist there.
She was great. And she
local to Toronto.
And she thought me asking for Chip's mom was not, like, she took that very sincerely. And at that point, there's a photograph, I think, in the second issue. And she was really trying to help me and guide me through the experience, thinking that I had legitimately called out. I just thought it'd be funny if I was holding Chip's mom's hand while I got pierced. And bless her heart, like, she was just incredibly giving, caring person that thought, like, oh no, you're freaking out, let me help you. I'm like, oh, it's just got even weirder.
I know, and I remember reading the poetry, because I was supposed to read the poetry while the piercing was happening, and I just kept looking over it and just seeing Matt's face. I'm just like, oh fuck, this is going wrong. Okay. Like, can I keep doing this?
Right, you didn't stop it though. You were like, keep going.
No. At that point, no. And dude was Quebecois, so there was a language barrier, and like it hurt real bad. Yeah. But then when I got the one down out here, I didn't even realize it had been finished. Right. And so, I told the guy what happened the first time, and he was like, all right, well, you want to start that breathing now, because we're getting into it. I'm like, okay, 1, 2, he's like, okay, we're done. And it's like, I didn't even feel it. So I think in the rush to find someone that would mobily pierce someone's nipple in a sex club, maybe he thought I was into pain.
Maybe
because there was a device used. There was a whole process.
And it was on stage.
Yeah.
So maybe he thought it was theatrical.
And I had never had piercings done before. But like he had a friend that was like shining an iPhone light. It was very, very classy. but it was
in front of my friends and my family. Like the publisher of a national newspaper was there. Like there were probably politicians there.
And then afterwards, we sat on stage and signed 200 copies of the book and tried our best to keep the employees of the club from taking their clothes off until we vacated. Because like, that was the other thing too, was like, they kept trying to like make their money.
Right.
And we're like, no. And that was like, listen, if it's that kind of party, the book is dead. Right. If that's if that's how we launched, it tells everyone it's the book you worried it was, right? So there was they had a real hard time understanding that we're having a party in a sex club. We absolutely want zero sex. Like we don't want dancers, we don't want shirts, we don't want clothes off. Like
right.
When I was setting up the party, like a few weeks earlier, I went to visit, and myself and my friend Chris were like talking to the owner, who's just like sleazy. He's a sleazy guy, you know, shirt like fully open, hair slicked back. I think it's Croatian. I don't know
what you would imagine a sex club owner to look like in a stereo.
Yeah, exactly.
And the set looked like if there was a Saturday Night Live sketch set in a sex club, it would be that design. Like he
was trying to gauge, you know, what we wanted for this, and he was also the kind of guy, like his like photo on his iPhone was of him,
of course.
like all muscle. And so he's like, you know, we can bring in a sushi girl lie there naked with sushi on her body. And we were just like, oh, okay. I mean, that's the thing. What about guys? Would you like, can you get a sushi guy as well? And he's like, why would you want a sushi guy? Like he couldn't, right. His brain couldn't compute. So I'm just like, oh, we're going to skip the sushi woman then. And
oh my gosh,
just have a party.
It was.
Though I will say, as soon as like, because when Matt was done, he was done, and I walked him out, got him in a cab, sent him on his way. Then I went right back in, stripped out of my Garfield suit, and got in the hot tub. It was so lukewarm.
God. Yeah.
Now, obviously, we are amidst the pandemic still and all this craziness. I mean, did you ever plan to have the wrap party or a final wrap up? Like, what would that have been like? Or is it just on hold until the one day that
the idea was going to be, because Matt was so generous in the beginning to fly to Toronto to do this stupid thing I'd set up, that I would go to Portland and we would do a stupid thing somewhere in Portland.
Like a funeral, but we should have bought a casket and filled the casket with issues. Should have set it on fire. Like, that's like a $4,000 casket. Oh, we know.
This is on brand.
Yeah. But no, it's one of the you know, biggest trivial bummer of the experience for me was like, oh, we didn't get to be together when it ended, you know.
I know. Yeah
We'll get there one day we'll be raw.
Exactly.
We're just gonna raw dog a shopping cart together, just lick every handle and it's gonna be great.
I know. I'm scared everyone's just gonna go crazy when it finally ends, right? Everyone's just gonna be like fiending to touch everything.
It's not gonna be like V-Day or whatever. It's not
I think between
one day everyone's like, we can do it all.
Right. No.
I think between the election and a vaccine, there is going to be a legit baby boom.
Yeah, I guess we shall see. Well,
and a lot of chlamydia.
Oh my goodness. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
Matt and Chip, it has been an extreme pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories and actually this experience. Like I got to finish reading the books and then talk to you guys. Like I'm spoiled as anything. Like I get to be in the best position possible here. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's super meaningful on many levels. One, I love talking to you both, but I absolutely enjoyed the story and the journey that you took everyone on. And again, the honesty was so important on so many levels. And so thank you both.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Really sweet.
All right. Until hopefully you'll come back again next time. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.